Zhou Zhixu is to marry again. He will follow the proper rites for a primary wife, 3 mediators and 6 betrothal gifts. He will take his beloved cousin as a secondary wife. Ru Nyang is carrying my child. I must marry her, he whispered, holding me close after our intimacy. My lord, might you consider another? Concubine Lu also conceived recently. I pleaded softly. He immediately rose, fully clothed, and said impatiently, how could anyone else's child compare to Ru Nyang's? Fine. I'm only informing you, not consulting you. You must take good care of Ru Nyang. Do not mistreat her. With these words, he turned and left for another courtyard. Watching his departing figure, I rummaged through the bottom of my dowry chest and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a divorce agreement, already signed and sealed with his fingerprint. The year after my child died, Zhou Zhixu intended to take the woman who had caused my child's death as his secondary wife. He would marry Jiang Yueru with the full honors due, a primary wife complete with 3 mediators and 6 betrothal gifts. This was what Jiang Yueru herself had told me. Madam, my husband says I shall receive everything you once possessed. Moreover, as I am with child, I must trouble you to arrange my marriage. Early the next morning, she arrived, her swollen belly thrust forward, flaunting her pride. Her face was etched with smug satisfaction. Seated in the main hall, I was at a loss for words. The date is set for the 5th of next month. My husband says it is an auspicious day. Jiang Yueru's eyes brimmed with provocation. It seemed she remembered what the 5th day of the next month signified. Only Zhou Zhixu had forgotten. That was the memorial day for my child. With him. Young lady, have you thought this through? After Jiang Yueru left, the matron entered from the outer room and asked softly. The nanny had watched me grow up since childhood, even after I married. Privately, she still called me young lady, wiping away my tears with a handkerchief. I handed her the divorce papers. Nanny, I've made up my mind, since I entrusted myself to the wrong person. I'd rather escape this sea of suffering sooner. Please take me to the magistrate's office to finalize our divorce. The nanny took the papers but did not leave immediately. She suddenly knelt on the floor and pulled a box from her bosom, staring at that familiar yet unfamiliar object. I froze in place. Inside lay the token of affection Zhou Zhixu had once given me. Back then, he wasn't yet the formidable minister of rights, just a poor scholar who had to copy books to make ends meet. To save money for my birthday gift, he ate bean porridge for a month. He worked tirelessly, copying books day and night. Only on my birthday could he finally present this gift to me. I took the box from the old nurse's hands and opened it. Inside lay a hairpin, still undisturbed. Its design was old-fashioned, yet it remained perfectly preserved. What is this, nurse? Furrowing my brow slightly, I felt puzzled. I couldn't fathom why the matron had suddenly presented this to me. Young lady, the matron gazed into my eyes and spoke slowly. I should not have overstepped my bounds. But I truly feel for you. Now that you have produced the divorce papers left by the master, I assume you are resolved to part ways. Since that is the case, there is no need for this item to remain. I implore you to destroy it yourself. The matron's face remained stern and unsmiling. Yet, seeing the strands of white hair that had sprouted at her temples for my sake, I felt a pang of sorrow. These past 2 years had left me utterly exhausted. The matron had endured so much suffering for my sake. Picking up the hairpin, a flood of memories surged through my mind. Zhou Zhixu, who washed clothes until they were bleached white yet always presented me with exquisitely priced jewelry. In his youth, his ears would turn slightly crimson as he confessed, I know this trinket cannot match your radiant beauty. One day, I shall find a treasure worthy of expressing my heart. When I achieve fame and fortune, I will give you the grandest wedding in the capital, with 3 letters and 6 rites. Through proper marriage, I will let all know you are my one true love. On our wedding night, Zhou Zhixu held my hand, his eyes brimming with tenderness. My wife, I will never betray you in this life. Yet in the end, the image etched in my mind was his departing figure that night. You mustn't be so jealous. I've decided to elevate Run Young to equal wife. I squeezed my eyes shut, raised my hand high, and smashed it down with all my strength. Crash! The delicate flower branch snapped, pearls scattering across the floor. The matron cheerfully carried the divorce papers out of the mansion. It had been ages since Shed looked so visibly delighted. I averted my gaze and began packing the belongings I would take with me. Once the matron returned, I would confess everything to Zhou Zhixu. Holding my dowry list, I started to tally the items. When my parents were alive, they cherished me deeply. To say my wedding procession stretched 10 miles would not be an exaggeration. Yet now, I looked at the list. Barely half its original length. I felt nothing but sorrow for myself. Zhou Zhixu never touched my dowry. I offered it willingly. When I first married him, he was still destitute. He studied diligently by day and copied books by night to support our household. Unable to bear his hardship, I sold my dowry to support our household. When he learned of this, he fell silent for a long time. Finally, he drew me into his arms and made a solemn promise. My wife, one day I shall repay you tenfold. I believed him, and he did. After becoming the top scholar in the imperial examinations and receiving an official post from His Majesty, his first act was to fulfill that promise. Even in my dreams, I smiled. Yet 3 years into our marriage, I remained childless. Rumors swirled outside. With no other choice, I took the initiative to bring him 2 concubines, Concubine Lu and Concubine Yun. The night before taking them, he told me, "My lady, do not worry. As long as they bear me an heir, I will send them away." Yet later, he kept them, claiming the children needed their birth mothers. Not long after, a cousin seeking refuge arrived at the Zhou residence, Jiang Yueru. Around the same time, I became pregnant. Zhou Zhixu was overjoyed, ordering all monthly allowances in the household doubled. During that period, our days seemed to return to the sweet, honeyed intimacy of old. Whenever he was home, he insisted on sharing every meal with me. When I suffered occasional morning sickness, he grew so anxious he declared he would study medicine himself. It took much persuasion to dissuade him from this notion. Instead, he rested his head on my shoulder and murmured quietly, "You've endured so much, my lady. Once the child is born, I shall teach him a lesson." I smiled faintly, convinced I was the happiest woman in the world. Back then, I treated Jiang Yueru like my own cousin, caring for her in every way. Whatever I had, I would share with her. So when she schemed to make me catch her in the act with Zhou Zhixu, I miscarried. Hearing the news, I became like a madwoman. I wanted Jiang Yueru to pay with her life for my child. But Zhou Zhixu merely gave her a light 20 lashes and confined her to her quarters for a month. That was all it took to pay for my child's life. I was filled with resentment and rage. I had my personal maid poison I wanted Jiang Yueru to pay with her life. Alas, it failed. Zhou Zhixu sent men to protect her. My personal maid was beaten to death, and I lost my stewardship rights. I, too, was confined for a month. When I emerged, half the items from my dowry had been replaced. When I confronted Zhou Zhixu, he accused me of slandering her. Besides, half of your dowry consists of gifts I once gave you. How could Ruer not use them? He shielded Jiang Yueru behind him. He stood against me. As noon approached, the matron still hadn't returned to the estate. Zhou Zhixu came to dine with me first. After the meal, he took my hand, his tone gentle. "I recall presenting you with many rare treasures as part of your dowry long ago." My eyelashes fluttered as I softly acknowledged it. He paused briefly before continuing. "Find those extraordinary items and add them to Rest's dowry. She marries me while carrying my child, she must not be treated lightly." Noticing my incredulous gaze, he hastily added, "When I find more worthy treasures in the future, I will replace them for you. I had heard those words before. Back then, I believed him. And he kept his word. But now I don't believe him. And he won't keep his word. Are you planning to give her all of my dowry? I brushed Zhou Zixu's hand away. Before he could answer, I handed him my dowry list. See what's left for me. My lord, take whatever you fancy. He frowned as he took the list. His expression turned grave. Why has your dowry diminished so drastically? For a moment, I found it rather laughable. How could he possibly ask such a question now? Has my husband forgotten? I told you before. Zhou Zhixu seemed to recall, his expression turning awkward. These past days have been hectic. I simply forgot. He placed the list on the table and explained to me. Forgotten. Of course. Unimportant things are meant to be forgotten. I lowered my head, saying nothing more. Very well. They'll find another way for Run Young's dowry. You need only attend to other matters. Zhou Zhixu sighed helplessly. You are the mistress of this household. Even if Run Young enters as a secondary wife, she will never affect your position. He suddenly looked at me as he spoke these words. I was puzzled, unsure of his intent, perhaps seeing my confusion. He paused before continuing. Do not interfere with Run Young's marriage. I've invited many officials to the wedding banquet. Any mishap would bring shame upon the entire household. A sudden sharp pain pierced my chest, stinging my eyes until they burned. In Zhou Zixu's eyes, I had become this kind of person. In that moment, memories of his past kindness toward me involuntarily flooded my mind. Contrasted with the present, they became a blade slicing through my heart. But what flowed from me was not blood, but tears. Why are you crying? He frowned in confusion, yet instinctively pulled me into his embrace. Run Young has no one else but me. I promise you. I will never take another concubine into the household. The promise whispered in my ear had long lost its truth. He thought I wept for him, but my tears were for the Zhou Zhixu who once loved me, not for the faithless man standing before me now. Shortly after Zhou Zhixu left, the steward delivered a box of jewelry. The master says the lady has endured much hardship these days. These trinkets are meant to bring her some comfort. This steward was Zhou Zixu's man, once arrogant toward me. Later, after I ordered him flogged, he learned his place. I picked up the jewelry to examine it. The designs were ornate yet somewhat old-fashioned, likely leftovers from someone else's selection. Did Jiang Yuru receive any? I already knew the answer, yet I asked anyway. The steward paused, his back bending lower. Madame Jiang received hers yesterday, sent by the master. I maintained a neutral expression and dismissed him, yet my gaze drifted involuntarily toward the courtyard entrance. Why hadn't the matron returned yet? Had something unexpected happened? That shouldn't be possible. Just as I was about to send someone to look for her, a young maid rushed into my quarters. Madam, Nanny Lu has been detained at Madame Jiang's quarters. What? Upon hearing this, I hurried straight to Jiang Yure's courtyard. Reaching the gate, I saw the nanny pinned to a bench, being tortured. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. What are you doing? Stop this. But my words held no sway now. The servants didn't pause. Madam, her face was deathly pale, yet she kept shaking her head, signaling me to leave her be. Only the servants carrying out the punishment remained in the courtyard. But I spotted Zhou Zixu's personal attendant, head bowed, standing guard outside Jiang Yure's door. Noticing my gaze, he whispered, Nanny Lu offended Madame Jiang. The master ordered 30 lashes for Nanny Lu. In that instant, I knew this was Jiang Yure's deliberate act. Back then, for my child, Jiang Yuru had endured 20 lashes. Now she was repaying me double. Glancing at the tightly shut door, I turned and threw myself at the matron the next instant. The servants reacted too late, and the blows landed on my body instead. Unable to hold back, I cried out in pain. Yet in the next moment, I felt relief thankfully. I had arrived. Otherwise, with that intensity, the matron would surely have been killed. After all, I was Zhou Zixu's legitimate wife. Seeing me rush forward, they dared not strike again. Someone hurried inside to report. Moments later, Zhou Zhixu emerged. "What are you doing?" He stood with his hands behind his back, his face clouded with displeasure. I rose from the matron's body, not answering him but countering instead. "Is her child still alive?" Zhou Zhixu frowned, his tone icy. "If anything happens to Runyang's child, I will make this servant pay with his life. But while death may be spared, punishment remains inevitable. This beating must be administered. Pay with their life." I twisted my lips into a wretched smile. "And what of my child? Who will pay for it?" Zhou Zixu's expression shifted before he lashed out at me. "Are you blaming me?" I met his gaze, offering no rebuttal. Zhou Zixu's anger flared as he barked. "What are you standing there for? Is the beating finished?" My expression shifted slightly, and I immediately threw myself over the old nurse. "She's so old. This beating will kill her." But Zhou Zhixu remained unmoved, only glaring at me coldly. "You've grown increasingly disobedient. Since that's the case, you shall take the remaining strokes in her place. Consider it a lesson learned." With that, he swept his sleeve and turned away. "No, master. The mistress is delicate and precious. How could she endure such punishment? This old servant will take the punishment, master." Ignoring the wounds on her back, the matron struggled to her feet, pleading on my behalf. But Zhou Zhixu paused only briefly, leaving me with a merciless back view. Smack! Smack! The board struck my body repeatedly, the pain making my vision darken. Before losing consciousness, I heard only the servant's startled cries and saw the matron's anxious face. "Lady, you're awake." When I regained consciousness, I was already back in my own courtyard. The matron stood by my bedside, hastily wiping tears from her face upon seeing me awake. I offered her a weak smile and asked, "Matron, did you manage to handle the matter I entrusted to you?" Her eyes were red, and she nodded repeatedly. "It's done. Young mistress, you have no connection to that man anymore." "That's good. That's good." Zhou Zhixu confined me to my quarters for a month. When I was finally allowed out, it happened to be the day he married Jiang Yueru. My injuries had mostly healed over that month. Stepping out of the courtyard, the servants had all gone to Jiang Yueru's place to offer congratulations. My courtyard was eerily quiet. Perfect. This suited me just fine. So, dressed in old clothes, the matron supported me, carrying a bundle, on the memorial day for my child. On Zhou Zixu's wedding night, I slipped away from the Zhou residence without a sound. Zhou Zhixu had just finished receiving toasts from the guests. His ears were filled with flattery, making him feel quite pleased with himself. Not long ago, when he married, everyone said Head made an excellent match. They said even if he failed the exams, Head never want for food or drink. But today, all praised his youthful promise and boundless future. Now, with a lovely wife in his arms, he was the envy of all present. "Master." Seeing his master silent, the young servant called softly. Zhou Zhixu snapped out of his reverie, suddenly feeling a desire to see Shen Yuelan, though she was no longer as gentle as before, having defied him just the other day. But surely this month of confinement had given her ample time to reflect. Still, tonight was his wedding night with Runyang. It wouldn't be proper to visit her. Tomorrow, then. Tomorrow he would go and keep her company. With these thoughts settled, Zhou Zixu's steps lightened slightly. Madame Jiang gave a full yang of wedding money today. She truly is a kind soul. Kind. If she were truly kind, she wouldn't have set the date for today. Two maidservants stood by the pavilion, murmuring quietly. Zhou Zhixu, who had intended to reprimand them, paused. The date. Wasn't today the auspicious day calculated by Runyang? What other date could it be? One of the maidservants snorted coldly. Madame Shen once had a child too. But she miscarried. Today is the very day Madame Shen miscarried. Zhou Zixu's expression changed slightly. He remembered. Around this time last year, Qin Yuelan had clung to him, weeping bitterly over the loss of their child. He had grieved deeply then too. For he had truly longed for a child with Yuelan. But Yuelan herself hadn't been strong enough. That's why the shock had caused her to miscarry. He had severely punished Jiang Yueru back then. So you see, the maid sighed helplessly. That woman is absolutely not as kind-hearted as you imagine. Zhou Zhixu suddenly recalled Qin Yuelan's expression that day, and an inexplicable sense of unease washed over him. It felt as if he were about to lose something. Yet he shook his head. How could that be? Qin Yuelan loved him so deeply. She couldn't possibly leave him. But despite this thought, his feet unconsciously turned in another direction. When he reached Qin Yuelan's courtyard, he found it completely unlit. He frowned, though he had confined Qin Yuelan. She remained the matriarch of the Zhou household. The courtyard shouldn't be this desolate. Pushing open the gate, he found scarcely any servants present. The rooms stood empty. A letter lay on the table. He picked it up and glanced at it. His pupils contracted sharply as he read the contents. Our marriage is dissolved. We are now strangers. The nurse and I returned home, back to the house I knew before my marriage. Miss Lan. Only a few elderly servants remained in the Shen residence. Startled to see me, hearing that familiar title, my nose stung with emotion. After my parents passed away, I never returned to this place of sorrow. Never imagined I'd come back to find it in such a state. Back in my former boudoir, aside from a layer of dust, nothing else had changed. I sat on the edge of the bed while the old nurse busied herself cleaning the room. It felt like returning to many years ago, back when father and mother were still alive. Seeing me return home wronged, they would gather around me, plotting ways to avenge my grievances. Contrasting that scene with this empty room now, tears welled up in my eyes. When ordered confined and beaten by Zhou Zhixu, I shed no tears. Yet now, merely thinking of my family, tears flow uncontrollably. Father, mother, Lan Yu misses you. I lay face down on the bed, sobbing until my voice cracked. The old nurse appeared behind me at some point, gently stroking my back, just as she always did. Only when my sobs finally subsided did she cease her movements, sitting beside me and asking softly, "What are your plans for the future?" Young miss. Plans. Yes. I must plan for my future. I cannot spend my days confined to the mansion, drowning in tears. I still owned numerous shops, plus the possessions my parents had left me. Money certainly wouldn't be an issue. Together with the nanny, I carefully tallied up the remaining assets under my name. Suddenly, the nanny sighed. Young miss, what I meant to ask was, do you plan to remarry? Remarry? I froze for a moment. Could I remarry? No. Or rather, would I even want to? Like before, giving my whole heart to someone, only to end up like this. Would I hand myself over to another stranger? Plunge myself back into that quagmire? My thoughts wandered to these past years, to the rumors I'd heard. Women who married, whether their lives were good or bad, seemed to be met with only one phrase. That was their fate. Nothing more than good fortune or bad. By their logic, mine is bad. Yet before I married, my parents cherished me like a precious jewel. That alone was good fortune enough. Even now, as long as I don't remarry, my life won't be so terrible. Besides, our dynasty's laws don't compel a woman to remarry after divorce. Therefore, I will not remarry. The moment I spoke these words, the invisible shackles binding my heart seemed to vanish. I recalled again. The reason I had initially been drawn to Zhou Zhixu was because I sought a husband who would satisfy me. With this purpose in mind, I developed feelings for him. Then, lured by his persuasion, I married him. All these years in the Zhou household, I grieved for him many times. Yet that divorce petition remained buried at the bottom of my trunk. A major reason was that I didn't know where to go after a divorce. I thought I had no home. But in truth, when I returned here, then, where my heart belongs is my home. The matron smiled at me. Whatever decision you make, young mistress, this servant will support you. The matron smiled. Yet I saw tears in the corners of her eyes. Early the next morning, I left with the matron to register as the sole head of the Shen household at the magistrate's office. Once registered, the Shen household would be mine to manage, even if I were to marry a man who joined my family. He couldn't lay a finger on anything belonging to the Shen household without my consent. At the magistrate's office, the clerk seemed somewhat surprised by my request to establish a female household. The old nurse slipped him a pouch, and so, the matter was smoothly settled. Returning home, I spotted a familiar figure standing at the Shen residence gate. It was Zhou Zixu's personal servant. His face was etched with anxiety. Seeing me, he hurried over. "Madam," I frowned slightly. "Right now." I wanted nothing more to do with Zhou Zhixu. "Move aside," I snapped coldly. But the servant suddenly knelt before me. "Madam, the master is furious. You must return at once. The master said that if you return obediently today, he will not pursue this matter further." The servant relayed Zhou Zixu's words to me. How laughable. Zhou Zhixu still held this attitude even now, claiming that if I returned, he would not hold my mistakes against me. What mistake had I made? What connection did I even have with him? Did Zhou Zhixu not see the letter I left for him? His reaction puzzled me. If he saw that letter and still acts like this, that would be truly laughable. He saw it. The servant kept nodding, then turned grim-faced. It's precisely because he saw it that he's so furious. How many years have you and the master been married? Why provoke him? Divorce isn't something resolved with a single word. You should hurry back and apologize to the master. Though kneeling, the servant's words mirrored Zhou Zixu's. Both were accusing me, just like his master. I stepped before him and stared at him for a long moment, until his voice grew faint. Smack. The matron, who knew me well, stepped forward and slapped the man. She then summoned the Shen household servants. "What kind of creature are you? How dare you speak to my young mistress like that? Does your master not recognize characters? That letter clearly states my young mistress has already divorced him." The matron raised her eyebrows, pointing at the servant as she scolded him. The servant covered his face, yet his eyes brimmed with doubt. "Go ask Zhou Zhixu if he remembers signing any documents at the Shen residence the night before marrying me." I tugged at the corner of my mouth, tossing out the words lightly before turning away. The matron called out behind me, ordering someone to drive the servant away. Zhou residence. Zhou Zixu's face turned ashen upon hearing the servant's report of Shen Yulan's words. He couldn't fathom why Shen Yulan was causing such a scene. Was it merely to prevent him from taking Jiang Yueru as a secondary wife? Was she truly so consumed by jealousy, possessing not a shred of tolerance? The servant knelt trembling on the floor, surrounded by shattered teacups. Jiang Yueru's expression was equally grim. Today was the second day of her marriage. Yet Zhou Zhixu had unleashed his fury over someone else. Where did that leave her? These thoughts made her womb throb with pain. "Husband, my stomach feels unwell." Jiang Yueru opened her mouth, hoping to elicit his pity. "If you're uncomfortable, go find a doctor. I can't cure illnesses." But Zhou Zhixu was irritable and lacked his former patience. He recalled signing a divorce agreement long ago. It had been one of Shen Yulan's father's conditions for consenting to the marriage. He had simply forgotten about it. He never imagined Shen Yulan would actually have the heart to divorce him. Jiang Yueru shuddered, tears streaming down her face. Zhou Zhixu instantly forgot all about Shen Yulan. "Ruer, I spoke out of turn just now. Don't cry. The doctor said you shouldn't cry while carrying a child." He truly cherished Jiang Yueru and couldn't bear seeing her weep before him. Yet deep down, he remained agitated over the matter involving Shen Yulan. Thus, His attentiveness toward Jiang Yueru waned. He merely had servants escort her back to her chambers to rest. Changing his clothes, he left the residence himself, ordering a carriage to be harnessed. Zhou Zhixu headed straight for the magistrate's office. He still found it hard to believe Shen Yuelan had truly divorced him, but upon seeing the official records confirming she had established her own household, his disbelief dissolved. The matron summoned all the shopkeepers under my name. They brought along the ledgers from these past years, though these were all long-serving staff. Embezzlement was inevitable. I was busy reconciling accounts, occupied all day long. By afternoon, I finally had a moment to spare. The gatekeeper reported that Zhou Zhixu had arrived. Before I could speak, the matron's face turned cold. What does he want? Send him away at once, don't let him soil our doorstep. Her reaction made it clear how deeply she now despised Zhou Zhixu. The gatekeeper went out to shoo him away, and I continued my stroll with the matron. Matron, I wish to open a new embroidery workshop, one that only hires women who have been formally registered as female household members. The moment I registered as a female household member today, this idea took root in my mind. If it is your wish, young miss, then proceed. Matron, won't you ask why I suddenly wish to do this? I halted and looked at the matron, but she smiled as gently as ever. This servant has little learning, yet even I know women face far greater hardships in this world than men. For those alone, it is even harder. The young mistress is kind-hearted, considering others as she considers herself, willing to offer them a place of peace. Yes, just a place of peace. The matron still understood me so well. Just as I was about to return, the gatekeeper came back. Madam, he says he's at least a second-rank official now. If he doesn't see you today, perhaps tomorrow our household will face misfortune. Zhou Zhixu was threatening me. My face turned completely cold, disgusted by his manner. So persistent about seeing me. I see what he wanted. What brings you here? Even saying his name now filled me with revulsion. Zhou Zhixu stood with his hands behind his back at the doorway, turning only upon hearing my voice. He studied me intently for a long moment before speaking slowly. If you regret this now, there's still time. A gust of wind swept through, lifting my hair. I looked at him and shook my head. It's too late. Zhou Zhixu looked puzzled. What I regret is marrying you in the first place. It's too late for that now. Ignoring Zhou Zixu's livid expression, I continued. Fortunately, we're already divorced. It's not too late for that. Zhou Zhixu, if you came here just to say this nonsense, you needn't waste my time. After speaking, I waited a moment, seeing him merely stare at me without uttering a word. I turned to leave, but just as I was about to enter the door, Zhou Zhixu let out a cold laugh. Shen Yuelan, what gives you the nerve to say these things now? Is it just those shops your parents left you? They'll wait 3 days for you. If you haven't returned obediently by then, don't blame me for forgetting our years of marital affection. My footsteps faltered for an instant before resuming their forward motion. After all these years as husband and wife with Zhou Zhixu, I wasn't entirely ignorant. His rise to the position of Minister of Revenue at such a young age was undoubtedly fueled by the wealth of my Shen family. Besides, I had never mentioned it to Zhou Zhixu. I possessed a natural photographic memory. Day 1. Unfamiliar faces began appearing around my various properties. I sat in my study all day, writing furiously. Day 2. My shops were vandalized. Still in my study, I documented the evidence of Zhou Zixu's embezzlement over the years. He had taken no precautions against me. The matron had contacted the imperial censor and Zhou Zixu's sworn enemy. Day 3. Zhou Zhixu arrived at my residence with soldiers. I stood in the hall. He sat on a high platform. Yuelan, I ask you one last time, will you return home with me? Zhou Zixu's expression was calm, his tone gentle. It hardly felt like a threat. Only then did I notice something was off about him. Beneath his placid surface, his eyes burned with madness. If you refuse, every shop under your name will be investigated for tax evasion after today. And you, the headmistress, will be imprisoned. But if you agree, you will remain the matriarch of the Zhou household. We will still be a celebrated tale in the capital. As for Jiang Yueru, whom you care about, I will only take her as a concubine. She will never surpass you." He finished these words, convinced his professed devotion would sway me. Return home with him, remain his caged bird. But I refuse. Zhou Zhixu. I hadn't called his name in so long. Why must I return with you? You were the one who abandoned me first, weren't you? The moment I left, I believed our lives would never intersect again. Yet now he persists in troubling me. I endured all that pain before. I chose him back then, so whatever came after was my own burden to bear. But now that I've left, he suddenly seems to regret it. No, if he truly regretted it, he wouldn't act like this. He should be begging for my forgiveness, not threatening me. Zhou Zhixu only ever saw me as his pet. When the pet runs away, naturally he must catch it. What the pet thinks matters not at all. When did I ever abandon you? It was you who divorced me without my knowledge. His emotions flared, deeming me unreasonable. You didn't know. Then I'll recount each deed for you. Today, I would settle all accounts with him. When I was pregnant, you conspired with Jiang Yueru to cause my miscarriage. That is the first. You shielded Jiang Yueru and had my personal maid beaten to death. That is the second. You repeatedly scolded me for her sake and confined me to my quarters. That is the third. And just recently, you elevated her to cowwife and beat me. With each word I spoke, Zhou Zixu's expression darkened. And my dowry. Enough. He cut me off, rising to his feet and glaring at me. I met his gaze coldly, without a flicker of fear. You won't even admit to favoring your concubine over your wife. Zhou Zhixu. You are utterly shameless. Zhou Zhixu not only dismissed my accusations. Instead, he sneered coldly, as if I were the unreasonable one. Leaning forward slightly, his tone grew aggressive. I'm shameless. And what about you? Have I not treated you well these past years? His eyes reddened as he recounted the years. Item by item, he listed those cherished memories I once treasured, as if they were family heirlooms. When I was gravely ill, how Head stayed awake all night, neglecting food and drink. How Head spared no effort for my birthday celebrations. When my parents passed, how Head stayed by my side day and night, comforting me, trying to cheer me up. His confident words and accusatory tone made me momentarily doubt myself, as if I truly were the heartless person he described. But then it suddenly dawned on me. The deeds he described were those of the young Zhou Zhixu. It had been ages since ID last celebrated a birthday to my satisfaction. The most recent illness was when Zhou Zhixu personally ordered the beating. SA were the actions of the Zhou Zhixu of today. In a daze, the man before me overlapped with and yet diverged from the Zhou Zhixu of my memories. That youth who once filled my heart with joy had ultimately become a faithless, fickle man. He was no longer the Zhou Zhixu who would pluck a peach blossom for me, who would blush at my smile, but a stranger who used old affection as leverage, trying to force me into submission. I met his gaze, my voice steady. Zhou Zhixu, from the moment we divorced, you were dead to me. Besides, now that you have Jiang Yueru, why bother entangling me? Zhou Zhixu fell silent, his gaze dark and inscrutable as he studied me. After a moment, a flash of ruthlessness flickered in his eyes. Since you're determined not to return with me, refusing the wine of courtesy and choosing the wine of punishment instead, I see no need to spare you out of old affection. With that, he waved his hand. The soldiers waiting behind him immediately moved forward, intending to take me away. I swept a cold glance around the room, my gaze returning to Zhou Zixu's face. You're abusing your authority. Aren't you afraid someone will report you? At my words, Zhou Zixu's lips curved slightly, his face brimmed with smug satisfaction. his tone laced with contempt. Qin Yuelan. You're just a woman. You don't understand the rules of the official world. I laughed softly. My gaze passed over him, settling on the matron who had been waiting patiently by the gate. I spoke deliberately. That may not be the case. I had anticipated his visit today. I had already instructed the matron to pass the ledgers outside. Over the years, he had embezzled public funds, perverted justice, and formed factions for personal gain. I recorded every ledger I recalled seeing and every person had dealt with over the years. Only today did I realize how many enemies had made. Those colleagues who had once feigned cooperation now couldn't wait to kick him while he was down. Zhou Zhixu was surrounded by officers. Even as they restrained him, disbelief filled his eyes. He glared at me, demanding, Qin Yuelan, did you do this? He tried to break free, but the guards tightened their grip. His official robe was crumpled beyond recognition. His jade cap askew. How dare you? I am an official appointed by the imperial court. The lead guard replied expressionlessly. This servant acts by the emperor's command. Zhou Zixu's face turned deathly pale, his lips trembling, watching Zhou Zixu's pitiful state as he was led away. A weight lifted from my heart. Once his figure vanished, I turned to the matron and instructed, send someone to the Zhou residence. Inform Jiang Yueru that Zhou Zhixu has been imprisoned. Make it sound as dire as possible. As I spoke, a smile deepened on my lips. She's barely 3 months pregnant now, and she drinks the pregnancy-stabilizing medicine I secretly switched for her every day. Hearing this news, she'll surely react just as I did back then. The matron understood and turned to leave. I lowered my head and touched my abdomen. Though we share no blood, I will avenge you. Gazing at the bright sunshine beyond the courtyard walls, I exhaled slowly. In the end, I had won. Whether it was because the evidence I presented was too damning, or because too many in the court sought Zhou Zixu's death, the verdict came down in mere days. Zhou Zhixu would be executed after autumn. His relatives exiled to Lingnan. I had intended to see him one last time, but I heard he had gone mad in prison, demanding to see me. I decided to go take a look. Adding insult to injury seemed fitting. In the damp, gloomy cell, an old woman was slipping silver to the guard. I stepped slowly into the inner chamber. A stench of decay and blood assaulted my senses. I frowned, covering my nose and mouth with a handkerchief. When I finally made out Zhou Zhixu in the corner, I paused in surprise. He was curled up on a filthy pile of straw, his clothes stained with blood from who knew what ordeal. His once handsome face was gaunt and distorted. His once jet-black hair was now mostly white, hanging in tangled strands. For a moment, he looked like an aged old man. Not a trace remained of his former spirited self. Hearing footsteps, he slowly lifted his head. Recognizing me, his voice rasped. You've changed. You used to be so gentle and kind, yet now you're so cruel. I paused, raising a hand to touch my own face. Had I changed? Perhaps. But so what? No one stays the same forever. You threatened me first. I met his gaze calmly. I intended to live peacefully. You threatened me. I had no choice but to fight back. He stared at me intently, then asked after a long moment, how did you manage all this? I chuckled softly. Speaking deliberately, Jiang Yueru told me. Impossible. He lunged forward, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the railing. You're lying. I feigned confusion, goading him. Then what? I left the Zhou household long ago. Without her help, how could I have obtained the evidence? He froze as if struck by lightning, his lips trembling. Impossible. I treated her so well. How could she betray me? Watching him like this, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. I decided to pour more fuel on the fire. Oh, I forgot to tell you the child in Jiang Yueru's womb isn't yours. I looked at him and smiled gently. She's had a lover for a long time. Only by bringing you down can she be with him. I lowered my head. casually brushing my sleeve. Judging by the time, she should have feigned death and escaped by now. You're lying. He erupted violently, shaking the railing frantically, his eyes bulging with rage. Bitch. You're all bitches. They'll kill you all. I ignored his madness and turned to leave. Behind me came his broken wails, laced with curses for Jiang Yueru. How laughable. Jiang Yueru hadn't betrayed him at all. It was all a lie I'd concocted. I only wanted to provoke him. But Jiang Yueru was indeed dead. She miscarried upon learning Zhou Zhixu had been imprisoned. Before her body could recover, she learned Zhou Zhixu had been sentenced to execution, and that she herself was to be exiled. That very night, she ended her life with a white silk cord. After everything concluded, I was swamped with work. The new talent workshop was about to open, and I'd expected few applicants. Yet when the recruitment notice went up, women began arriving steadily. Some were divorced women like me, their eyes bearing traces of hardship yet standing tall, declaring they wanted to earn a respectable living on their own. Widows who'd lost their husbands came with young children in tow. And then there were unmarried girls who approached with confidence, asking if they could learn a craft here. Watching them, I felt a sudden dizziness. It turns out this world has never lacked brave women. It was just that before, I was trapped within the confines of the Zhou household. My eyes were fixed only on the scheming and intrigue within the inner quarters. And I never truly saw the world as it was. Some voiced their concerns for me, offering gentle reminders. Madam, your household is vast and prosperous now. But if you grow old without an heir, who shall inherit this fortune? I merely smiled faintly at these words, offering no reply. I'd heard that the reigning princess had no consort, yet her mansion housed a retinue of male companions. The children born to them recognized only their mothers, not their fathers. They lived with unrestrained freedom and grace. In the past, hearing such tales, I felt only admiration. Now, however, a sudden thought struck me. Why couldn't I follow her example? Those young, handsome gentlemen, gentle and considerate, skilled at bringing joy. Wouldn't it be delightful to keep a few? At this thought, I couldn't help but laugh aloud. Life, it seems, is becoming more and more interesting. The end.